Good to have you join us for the Reporters Round Table, where we discuss issues from all angles and from all sides. Today we are looking at a very important topic: is Ghana's free SHS policy sustainable? My name is Rebecca Ewa, and as always I bring your thoughts alive. And with me in the studio to do this discussion, I have with me Cliff Akufo. Cliff is a chief reporter with the New Times Corporation, publishers of the Ghanaian Times. Also with him is George Ramsey Benemba, the man who cannot be hated. He is also a chief editor with the Ghana News Agency, and we will be tackling this issue. You can also join us via WhatsApp or on text, and you can follow, like, and share our transmission on our Facebook page at the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation Facebook page, because the program is streaming live now. Please like, share, send in your comments right away. We are looking at the topic: is Ghana's free SHS policy sustainable? Send your text on 0557 446 427 0557 446 429. It will be displayed on your screen shortly. Kindly send your messages and we'll be glad to receive them right here on set. So, Cliff, great to have you.
Thank you, Becky.
We know that even some, including educationists or renowned educationists, have questioned the timing of the free SHS policy. In your perspective, would you say it is appropriate, the timing is appropriate, or it came rather late?
Well, I cannot but disagree with those who feel the timing of the free SHS was wrong. Because literature has shown that today, our contemporaries that we easily cite as having started the journey of development with those we have come to refer to as the Asian tigers, when we started this journey, had almost the same literacy rate as we had. Today, South Korea is hovering around 90-something% in terms of literacy. Malaysia in the 80%, Singapore in the 90%. Whilst currently we are hovering around 21% in terms of literacy. If in the 21st century, our literacy population is just 21% of our total population, and we still think the introduction of the free SHS policy was at the wrong time, then I doubt the status of this so-called renowned educationists and what they actually desire for this particular country. The implementation of the free SHS policy, for me, is one of the boldest social intervention in the history of this country, and I would mince no words about it. It may have its challenges, but like all other programs or policies, it will come with its teething challenges. What I believe we need to do is dispassionately look at the challenges and find sustainable ways of dealing with the challenges, rather than talk about whether the timing was wrong or we were not ready for the free SHS. The 1992 Constitution that talks about free compulsory basic education did not give timelines. Have we asked ourselves how many years it took us to get to this point? Were we going to wait for the Constitution to attain 100 years before we talk about implementing that free compulsory education for us captured in the 1992 Constitution? So I totally disagree with those so-called educationists. The timing can never be wrong. There are challenges, and as a people, we must rise up to the occasion and resolve those challenges for it to work today, tomorrow, and for generations yet unborn. We cannot, it's not negotiable. We cannot compromise on this particular policy if we really want to develop as a society.
As we continue with the conversation, we'll delve deep into some of the teething problems, as you've just said, and discuss them dispassionately so that we can find a sustainable means of maintaining it. But let me give Ramsey a bite on this. Rather late than never.
There's this popular English saying that the only person who has never made a mistake is the one who has not tried to do anything. And you see, the free senior high school education policy, just like any other, started with teething problems that we all know, challenges. And that is not to mean that they cannot be surmounted. I realize that some of the earlier challenges that the policy encountered was crowding in the schools, where the infrastructure could no longer absorb the number of students.
We'll come
yes,
to that,
I'm building on a point.
Okay.
Another, that was one of the issues, and that is one of the reasons why some people were saying that it was not time, they should have put up the structures, and that is why I started with the proverb. Okay. Because if a snake is lying down, coiled, and you don't hit it, you will never know where the head is. It is when you hit it that the head will come out. If you don't start that program, if the government hadn't started that program, they wouldn't have known. Because previous years, it got to a time that education was almost like for the rich people. Because the school fees alone was carrying. And only few people who had money could send their children to school. And so it behoved on the government to take other policies that will embrace other children that would have been left out of the system. The reason why they came up with the free education system to absorb a lot of students wandering outside there with good qualification and left out, excuse me, to rot in the air. And I believe that bringing that policy at that time was the right time to encourage most of our students out there to be on board, to educate, as he said about literacy. The literacy rate in Ghana is so low. And for me, it is one of the best ways to ensure that we raise the literacy rate maybe in the next 10 years. As at in November 2021, 1.6 million students had benefited from the free education. And you can imagine that if this was fifth paying as it used to be, whether we would have been able to get that number of students in school, because it was so scary. Before the free senior high, school fees at the senior high were far, far higher than school fees at the tertiary levels. Because I had two children who finished before the free education. And at the term, each term I was paying almost 1,000 cedis then for just one term. So if you calculate the figures, 1 year for one student is almost 3,000. That is beside the other provisions you buy for the person. So if you are a parent and you are relieved of all this amount of money at the end of each year, then you'll be the first to say that the timing was good and it will still be good if well maintained for the future.
A great one. Let me hear from Cliff. And now you, Ramvi has delved into the importance of the policy. I don't know if you have any other thing to share with us. How important has this policy been?
The importance of this policy is underpinned by the fact that education is one of the most important legacy you can leave for any generation. And the countries we aspire to be like are where they are today largely as a result of education. And so there is no argument about that. You and I sitting here today are here largely not because we are the most intelligent, the most sensible, but it is as a result of what education has done for us. So education defines what we want our society to be. And there is evidence to show that the higher the literacy rate in any society, the faster the development rate. So no question about the importance of education. And if that is the case, then anything that inhibits every child from having access to education must be removed. And that is one of the things that the free SHS has come to do. Not removing all, but at least one of the most critical inhibition of majority of our people terminating their education, at least at the secondary level, is what the free SHS has come to address. So the importance of the free SHS cannot, because I have interviewed people and I have asked simple questions. Do you believe that every child born in Ghana must be educated? And the answer is resounding yes. Do you believe that not every child born in Ghana has the ability through the kind of parent or where the person is born to access education? The answer has been resounding yes. Do we believe that if our government had resources, it is the responsibility of our government to ensure that every child in this country secures education? The answer has also been resounding that yes. Then I proceed to say, so what is our problem with a government saying, I am providing free senior high school, and then they go into what the challenges are? And I draw people's attention to the fact that yes, it will be very naive to assume that you roll out a project without challenges. Even a church deciding to build a bigger auditorium will come with its own challenges. So for every policy decision that is taken, it will be naive to assume that you were going to have it on a roller coaster drive, because there will be challenges. So then I conclude by saying it is important that we avert our minds to the challenges and dispassionately discuss the challenges, because in the course of those discussions, we will be able to find out workable solutions that will make the program sustainable. For as long as every parent aspires that his or her child should receive some minimum level of education, we can't compromise on the free SHS.
With the survey that you did and the questions that you posed, getting those resounding yes and yes and yes, what were, and having reported, what were the challenges that people told you or parents had to come up with, that they needed solutions to?
One of the major challenges, no two ways about that, like Ramsey said at the initial stages, was the space in terms of building infrastructure to be able to accommodate the numbers. It was one. Then even when the policy implementers decided that as part of the short-term solution, let's go for what they described as the track system or the tracking system. That also in itself, even though it was meant to be a solution to address a particular challenge, in itself also became a challenge for some parents. Then the other challenge was the erratic nature of the timetable. And I'm sure in recent times, what has even reignited the debate over whether the timing of the free SHS was right or not is the issue of food shortages in some of the schools. But I say yes. That is why we are human beings. That is why God has given us brains. Our brains are meant to think, to solve challenges. And so these challenges must be addressed one way or the other. There are times, if you are a journalist in this country, before the free SHS, our northern schools who were on some level of free education, bursaries, in terms of food shortages, it is nothing new. So where we present the narrative for it to look as though it is the free SHS that is creating this problem, then I sincerely have my doubt about the sincerity of all those talking about those issues.
No, for some, the financial burden it incurs on
yes,
on
people have talked.
It's huge, and that is why. Let me bring you around here. I'll give you the chance to.
You see, people talk about the financial burden.
Yeah.
But have we found out how much our government have sent so far in terms of implementation of the free SHS? Now, juxtapose that spending with how much we have spent in dealing with what we call the banking sector cleanup. If we were to dedicate the amount of money we spent in cleaning up the banks to free SHS, it means we will implement free SHS for the next 10 years without any headache. So the argument about financial burden is neither here nor there. If you were a country spending $1 billion annually paying energy we produce but do not use, and yet we have to pay for, then the argument about free SHS is neither here nor there. Let us look within. What are the real challenges? What are the waste we need to cut off in order to be able to possibly transit from providing free SHS even to free tertiary education? I've given you just 2 items. Today, if you were converting $1 billion into cedis, that would be 8+ billion Ghana cedis. From when we started free SHS to now, we have spent a little below 3 billion. So, excess capacity payment alone can give you 5 years of free SHS. So, what financial burden matters are we talking about?
Anyway.
I wanted to pose a question, but let me bring you around.
Yeah, you were talking of maybe some of the importance and disadvantages, and I think that the free senior high school, I mentioned earlier on that at least it has relieved the burden, reduced the burden of parents paying high school fees in senior high schools. And that alone is one of the best reliefs you can give to parents. Secondly, it has also led to the expansion of infrastructure in various schools. When they started when they started, there were a lot of schools that had these challenges. You go to some schools, they don't even have girls' dormitory. They make boys, these students. So when they started the free education, there was a hue and cry about accommodation for both boys and girls. The reason why the government had to carry out expansion programs in almost all the senior high schools that we have in the country to ensure that at least 90% of the students were getting, 90% of them will get, accommodation, hostels, dormitories, hostels for tertiary. And apart from that, initially, one of the biggest problems that they were having was shortage of, I wouldn't say shortage, too much pressure on teachers, the existing teachers. And the government quickly addressed that by appointing, I think, 20,000 or 200,000 teachers immediately.
I think it was 8,000 teachers.
8,000, so 8,000 teachers across the country to take care of the deficit. And at the end of the day, I have not heard anybody talking about teachers again, shortage of teachers in various subjects. subject areas in the schools.
Only that the teachers themselves are complaining of too much workload.
Stretch. So
Yeah.
what happens now is most of them even like the shifts. Some of the schools even have a lot of teachers that can take care of the green and the gold, the tracking system, which is now, in fact, they are integrating them now. A lot of schools have started integrating them because they now have infrastructure to let all the various strengths come to school together. But a lot of them are also still running the shift system. And in fact, as he said, it's not going to be a 2-day, 2-year, 3-year program. It's going to continue, and definitely at a point in time, there's going to be a wedge that will stop the challenges and bring on board. If you look at even the system right now, you have equity. Equity in terms of students coming from the rural areas who hitherto will not even get some of the so-called big schools that we have in the country. But now, the system is saying that if you are good and you get good grades and you choose a big school, you should be able to get it. And if you are good, you are from a rural place, you get a school, you should be able to go to school. Much as I will come there, much as one of the disadvantages, most of the schools have realized that most of the schools are now pushing a lot of things in the prospectus. Maybe because the students are not paying school fees, they are not paying library fees, they are not paying SRC, and they are now pushing a lot of the things in the prospectus. If your child is going to school today and you don't have up to 4,000, you might not be able to buy all the prospectus that they will give you for it. Because there are so many now, unlike in the past where you just have some few to buy. But that notwithstanding, I still think that the advantages here will overweigh. If you calculate the amount of money that you would have been paying every term, and calculate how much you spent on maybe the prospectus for the first year, which is once for the 3 years. I think that the advantages that we have in the system right now outweigh or overweigh the disadvantages. It is only for governments at this point in time to take up measures that will submit the disadvantages, so that in the next 2-3 years, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about disadvantages.
That is what you refer to as the wedge.
Yeah, the wedge. To block our people will say chalk, to wedge the moving car.
Oh, okay. I now get it. But looking at what you both have said, considering the challenges, I noted down infrastructure, the semester or the shift system, the workload on teachers, shortage of food, and all of those. Do you think that these could have been averted if a scientific survey, SOMOTO, have been done at the initial stage before this policy was rolled out?
Oh, but, before you come in, I know you are coming in. You just talk. Cliff talked about shortage of food in schools not being a new thing.
Yeah.
And I must add that in 1998, I was then in WA. A principal of the Jahan Training College at that time, in Nusra Jahan, in WA at that time, reported to my bosses that they should sack me because of a particular story I wrote about these food shortages. They said what they used to do is, and as at that time, 98, there was food shortage. Then the principal then made a statement. He was talking to me. I was interviewing him, and it's like, if the government is not ready to release money to us, they will close down the schools and go, because we can't keep on borrowing to buy food that government is not paying for.
So with the picture you are painting
yes,
now.
And quickly I use that as my storyline because he's giving government ultimatum. And I said, well, he's appealing to government, but he's also giving timelines that if government doesn't meet those timelines, they will close down the school. And when they called this principal to warn him, he later became a regional minister. I'll mention his name. And when they called him to warn him, he called me and told me he didn't tell him. Luckily enough, I recorded him. So as back from those years, 1990, even the 80s, we used to have food shortages in some of the schools. And it's not a new thing. So as he said, it is just because it has coincided with the time the government is broke. And so definitely somebody sitting outside there will connect it. And that is how far they've been able to connect it. But food shortages in school have not, there have been certain times various school CHAS, they postpone the reopening of schools. Several years they've been doing it, postponement of reopening of schools, all because food supplies have not been delivered. But
with this food supply, you know from where you were coming from, what came to mind, I wanted to find out is, even with our current situation, would we say that it is artificial or that is the real situation on the ground?
That is why I said, I see it as a challenge, whether it is real or artificial. The media is reporting of food shortages. You are seeing pictures over there. My only challenge is how we have managed to politicize almost everything in this country, such that we don't see beyond our political noses. That is where I have a challenge. I will deal with it as a challenge. How many times haven't we reported of matrons stealing food meant for school children? In the course of stealing the food, would that necessarily lead to shortage of food? It is possible. So then it becomes part of the challenge. So as a people, as a collective, how do we address that? Is it possible that government might have delayed in disbursing monies for the procurement of these food? It's possible. That is a challenge. How do we as a collective impress on our government to ensure that the importance of the free SHS means, as a government, you cannot sleep on releasing money for procurement of food. So it's a challenge that we'll have to deal with. Is it deliberate that somebody would want the system to fail? It's a challenge. And I'm sure as we sit to discuss, all these challenges will come out and then we'll be able to find solutions.
Let's prefer solutions. How do we get all these challenges resolved? What would we suggest as people in the Inky fraternity?
At this
because
level,
we are faced with the challenge of and we get to the grounds to report.
At this level, what we do is just to report. But I'm saying, sitting here to proffer solution is not the way to go. At least 5 years into the implementation of the free SHS. 5 years, because we've had the first badge and second badge of that. It is time for us to take a review of the policy. Once we go for a review of the policy, dispassionately, we'll be able to know what has worked for us from day one to date and what is working against the policy from day one to date. And then out of it, because they say wisdom is not in the head of one person. So whilst you may be looking at it from a particular angle, somebody may also be looking at the issue from another angle. We sit down as a collective, you speak to the issues as you see it, he speaks to the issues as he sees it, I speak to the issues as well, and then on the table, we begin to shuffle.
And I think this is one arm that can also speak from the angle from which we see it, so that we can also prepare something.
Because if I were,
since the government came to power, that was the flagship program of the government. And what we are seeing, once you also prefer a solution, it will also help them in a way when they go to the review table to review the entire policy.
I have wondered why from the days when I was in secondary school, we have allowed matrons to steal food meant for us.
And sell.
And to date.
Not for consumption, but for sale.
For sale. To date. It is still going on, such that it finds itself in the free SHS. It is not just one person who have been found to do that. And these are those that have been caught. Can you imagine the number of people who are equally doing same, who have not been found out? How is that attitude working against the policy that will in the near future benefit all of us? You understand? That is why I say it is not about apportioning blame. It's about sitting around the table.
No, we are not apportioning blame. We even want the solution because we have tackled some of the
5 years into the policy, I believe the time has come for a stakeholder engagement of the policy. I don't have a problem if after review the consensus is that let everything, including everything, be free. I don't have a problem. If at the end of the day, upon the review, I've heard people say those who can pay must be allowed to pay. It is not just by saying those who can pay must be allowed to pay, but now move beyond just that and then give us a clear statistics or data that can actually show those who can pay in the system.
And the experts can help us do that. This one is from Andrew from Nungwa. Andrew says, good day to you and your guest. My view is that the program has two areas, school fees and academic materials. The second point is feeding of students. My view is that we stop the feeding program. Parents who can afford the boarding house have to bear the cost of feeding for their wards. While those who can bear the cost, those who can't bear the cost, we have to make their wards go for the day. I don't know, I think the days as day students.
Would that not be discriminatory?
Well, that is his view, just as you have yours. So that is from Andrew from Nungwa. This one says, hi, Rebecca and your panelists. The policy can only be sustainable if and only if it is devoid of politics. Yeah. Today, the kind of problems that the heads and students of the schools are going through, if parents get to know, they will withdraw their wards and send them to private schools. It's pathetic. Madam, when the issue of food shortages popped up, the government said they have supplied food to the schools. The car came with food to one school in Navrongo and gave the school only 3 bags of rice. What can 3 bags do, you ask? I beg for God and country, send your cameras out to the northern schools and find out about this food issue today. You will weep for the children. Thank you. My name is Rahman from Boko. Thank you so much, Rahman. You can also send your comments on 0557 446 429 0557 446 429. We are looking at the sustainability of the free SHS policy. We know currently we are faced with economic crisis. How expensive would it be to sustain this education policy? We have said that it's very important, but yes, how expensive would it be to sustain it?
I don't know the statistics that have gone into maybe the policy, but then I think that every government policy has a budget, and the budget has a period of time. Maybe the number of years is supposed to run, and I don't think the current economic crisis that we have now will affect the budget that would have been set aside for this particular policy for the past years. Well, it might have an effect on it, but totally I don't think that it can wipe away the whole budget that has been rolled out for this project. But as Cliff said, I think it is now about time for us to sit down and do a review of the past and see if we can carry out a preview for the next 2, 3, 4 years, how we are going to fund it, how we are going to get the money, how we are going to handle the funding at various schools, some of the things we should introduce to make it more lively and maybe acceptable, some of the things we think are inimical and should therefore be removed. I think a review and preview will give the experts the opportunity to make good recommendations that will ensure the sustainability of this policy. As we sit here, our duty is to knock at the issues and maybe to ring bells to the powers that be. But we are not the final say, but our contribution here is also going to be helpful to policymakers in terms of the sustainability of this particular policy.
If you want to come in, or let me pick a few comments from our viewers at home. The free SHS, well, this one is coming from Dr. Baba Zamo, the Master Planner Junior in Kintampo. Baba Zamo, you says the free SHS is one of the best policies in the history of Ghana. Any government that dares to touch it will eventually never win elections in this country again. Free SHS is for both the poor and the rich. Thumbs up to President Nana Akufo-Addo. Congratulations to Honorable Stephen Intim, NPP National Chairman. Okay. So that is where Dr. Babazamo, you chose to end your your submission. Thank you for that message. We do appreciate. Hello, please. It's very sustainable when governments crafts ex gratia to judiciously support feeding of the students. Why not? Free SHS can be sustainable. From Nana in Tema. Nana, thank you. Okay.
So I cannot but agree with the last tester.
Nana.
Yeah, because indeed, everybody with basic economics, they said our human needs are, wants are many.
Insatiable.
Good, the resources to satisfy them. So as a result of that, you always draw what we call the scale of preference. What is most important to you, you list them according to the order, the hierarchy of importance. If as a country, we sincerely believe that education is the #1 need for our development, then the issue of sustainability does not even come in at all. Then we all agree that for the next 20, 30 years, let our government dedicate all our budgets to education, because that is a choice we'll have to make. If we are not interested, but rather continue to lament about how unsustainable free SHS is, but do not see the problem of our MPs being given 50,000 Ghana cedis as a rent allowance, giving them $30,000, $50,000 for car. We do not see. We do not see how problematic it is for our ministers to be offered V8 plus saloon cars, for them to be riding in V8 in the city center. Then the foregone alternative will be for us to scrap our free SHS so they can continue to enjoy in their luxury. So for me, anytime I hear the issue of sustainability, it gets on my nerve.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
It gets on my nerves.
You know why?
Because there are so many things that we can do away with, and we will survive as a people. Why do we give MPs 50,000 Ghana cedis rent allowance every year? What for?
They are your representatives in Parliament. They do all the they take all the heat
so
on
if
your
that
behalf.
is sustainable, then providing free education should equally be sustainable.
Because they are the vulnerable in society.
Because the majority, they are the vulnerable in there. That's why I said the debate must be dispassionate. I felt very bad with the last but one tester. You see, this is what we do, and then the rare essence of the discussion is lost, because then everybody is looking at who takes political advantage of the issue. You understand? So by introducing politics into it, then those who believe they are not going to benefit from it must find a way to bring the
that is
down.
where I was coming to when you talk about the being sustainable, getting on your nerves, because we are in a country where we don't have a national agenda. It is the political party promises that have become programs that are rolled out every time. So, and we have seen it play out. When one party comes to power, the programs of the other party discontinues. That is why I'm asking. So, in moving forward, is this something that we want it to be a part of Ghana's agenda and not a political party agenda?
A political party.
Sustainability comes in here.
A political party rolled out free, what was the name? National Health Insurance. Do we as a people believe that? You see, at the end of the day, it is one person who generates the idea, and that person may belong to a political party or may not belong to a political party. The most important thing is, how does that idea affect all of us as a people? Once it affects all of us as a people, then it must take national character. It must be national in character rather than who takes glory for it. You understand?
That's right.
Because at the end of the day, if in the next 20 years we have an educated population, if we're able to move, because before free SHS, I think our literacy ratio was around 17%. Today, we are being told we are around 21%. So if that is the trajectory we are going to move, within the next 20, 30 years, we should be able to hit what we call the at least 60%. Once we hit 60%, we are making a headway. It wouldn't matter who introduced what or who didn't introduce what. For me, people said when there's change of government, people were going to do away with a national health insurance. When those who introduced national insurance, health insurance were kicked out of power, did we scrap national health insurance? Because
no, but they're still suffering.
No, it is still suffering. Even till date, it is still suffering. That's why I said, as for the challenges, why? You think those developed countries, they don't have challenges? Every policy, just like giving birth to a child, the child will go through problems from teething, even as it begins to grow teeth, there are problems, walking, crawling. We go through problems until we die. So we must see society as an organic being. We are human, like human beings. We have life. So every policy you put in there, you address this problem, and in addressing that problem, itself leads to another challenge. So we are not going to finish with solving challenge. I don't think America, the UK, Germany have finished solving
when you started the issue, when you started the example of the child, you know, I started laughing because it is Ramsey who usually has many proverbs to back his. Right, my friend.
Yeah, Becky. Governance is all about continuity. When one government takes over from the other, you inherit both assets and liabilities. And it normally takes one person or one government to come out with a policy. Whether it is good or bad, it is binding on us. It is incumbent on whoever is in power to improve on whatever policy that was put in place before them. We had the Kwame Nkrumah coming out with independence. We were not able to address all the nitty-gritties of the independence. But the subsequent government, but for the transition of democratic rule, subsequent government also came out with something that were quite useful to the country. It took one president or one government to change the middle school system to JHS system, which we inherited and we are still in as we sit here. It took one person as a national health insurance and we are still in it. It took one person to introduce school feeding program, which school children are still enjoying, though we have those challenges. So yes, it took one government to also introduce the leap,
Yeah.
and people are still enjoying. So no matter what we do, somebody must begin something, and that somebody beginning something from another party doesn't mean that if we are not in that party, then you should come out with all the measures that will cripple that policy, because you never know. You will never know when you also take over the reins of governance. If you put somebody is climbing a tree and you take the sandals, you never know when that person will start throwing stones at you there. So we should always be careful, discuss issues devoid of politics. If there's a national policy, coming together to discuss issues that will enrich that policy is one of the cardinal points every Ghanaian must follow to ensure that whatever policy that comes will benefit all of us, rather than fighting over who brought it and how disadvantageous it is to the Ghanaian that we find through every Ghanaian in Ghana.
Right, so in a minute, be thinking about the recommendations you give the current government, and even beyond that. Let me take a few messages from him. My name is Adamu Ben Mahmoud from Domi Pillar 2. Kudos to your panelists and contributors so far for backing the free SHS policy. The Education Minister, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempe's strictness has brought to bear the pilfering some of the food items in the schools. Is it not all the pilfering, but it not being for the pilfering, we wouldn't have seen the reports. It is an expensive program, so we all must help to sustain it. The benefits will come in leaps and bounds. I am a retired teacher, and my name is Adamu Ben Mahmoud, Domi Pillar 2. Thank you very much, Mr. Adamu. The free SHS is one of the best policies, and we all must help sustain it. Be it in economic crunch or crisis or whatever, it has to be sustained. Just as your panelist said, it takes one bold person or government to bring up a national policy, whether you call it a political policy. Now it has assumed a national character, and we all must rally around it. Thank you so much for that one, and so far that's what I have. Let's look at recommendations now and even after, because we have said emphatically that it should assume a national character and not just be like a political party campaign message that has, yes. So what would be our recommendations moving forward?
Well, as I said earlier, 5 years into that, we are the sixth year into the program. This year, I think we will be having the fourth batch of beneficiaries, or the third batch of beneficiaries.
From the
it's more than 3. There should be.
No, I mean those who are
finishing. Okay.
Yeah, I think they're at the fourth. I think the fourth batch. So I think for me, this is the right time for us to pause for a reflection, review, and see. You see, it's quite. I felt quite excited when the announcement was made that IMF was coming into our country. One of the things that almost everybody was talking about was that the fear of IMF going to say, government, stop free SHS. You understand? That was, I felt, wow, in spite of all the challenges and the cynicism and everything, the very people who assumed that the free SHS was for a giving were afraid IMF was going to ask our government to stop funding the free SHS. And so when it came out that the IMF itself had indicated that it was an innovative policy, you saw how the news media, almost everybody chose that angle, because that was the news, that in spite of the fears we were expressing, the IMF with its whip comes in and says that is an innovative program. That should tell our political class that the people of Ghana know what is good for them. And in spite of the challenges, we will rally to demand that they ensure that this policy works today, works tomorrow, and works into the future. Immediately, the government, within these difficulties, must call for a stakeholder consultation, a review where people gather around one table, discuss the issues dispassionately, and find ways of making it sustainable. But I can tell government that there will be no excuse whatsoever to tell us that there will be no funding for free SHS. No government today or tomorrow, because education is the lifeline of our development. And we have joked with it from 1957 till date. Can you imagine without education, what would have the divide? Even today, there's north-south divide. We are talking of how wide it is. Can you imagine if that kind of bursary policy had not been introduced in the north to bridge that gap? So I sit here and I speak with all the passion in me. No government will be allowed to tinker with the free SHS. At worst, they must make it better than it is today for all of us as a people.
Yes, stakeholder consultation and a forum or whatever we'll call it, that is going to be very important. That is bringing all brains together, where we'll have educational policy, experts, good educationists with their good policies. We should have the involvement of parents. We should have the involvement of teachers and teacher unions. We should have the involvement of student unions and students themselves. If we bring all these people together, and sometimes maybe development partners, I am sure that we are at the end of the whole day going to find what we call beneficial solutions to the current challenges that the free senior high school policy is faced with. If we bring them together for maybe a week or two, I am sure that great ideas will come, and tomorrow we will not come back to talk more about the challenges. We will rather be talking about benefits.
Hello. I am glad you are discussing this issue. Let's call a spade a spade. I think the free SHS policy is a good one, but the students are hungry. How can they learn effectively if they cannot get food to eat? How can they stay healthy if they keep eating only one kind of food for days, making their diet unbalanced? If the feeding can't be sustained by the government, let parents pay for the feeding of their wards. Those who cannot afford to pay for the feeding can opt to be day students. There is no discrimination in that at all. Why must the government take upon itself the burden of feeding all school children, which is obviously a challenge when some parents can comfortably pay for the feeding of their wards? Please, let's not politicize education and health training. My name is Samuel Anane from Awoshi. Samuel, thank you.
MPs have their houses yet, they collect 50,000 rents.
He is saying that for the food, let parents take, so that at least it will relieve government of the burden. Once you are paying the fees, it is enough. That's what Samuel thinks. I would have loved it if President Nana-Addo will use President Mahama's plan. That is the progressive free SHS. Group A schools full fees, Group B half school fees, Group C quarter school fees, Group D free school fees.
So whose child will go to Group D? Whose child will go to Group D?
And
that is the question my panel.
That's going to be another challenge, because at the beginning of the day, I can also see that
borders should pay for their feeding costs and the utilities. My name is Isaac Abuaje, but all in all, the policy is a good one. But borders should pay for their
students are resisting utility payment.
Okay. You want to easily get employed, then education is the way out, even though it's not guaranteed in our part of the world. Free SHS is a good policy. Hello, I think it's sustainable. The challenges will come, but the determination, we can win together. My name is Ni Blase, #1 from Odododiodo. Okay, Ni Blase. Daniel Yeboah, aka Koyo, says free SHS has come to stay, and if we think the policy doesn't sound good in our ears, take your child to a private school, period. And now my question, how are we going to review it if we think the policy is not good? Right now, who is going to pay and who is not going to pay? That is what our program is seeking answers for, because it's been 5 to 6 years into the program, and we know government is also listening, and the powers that be will do the needful, having seen the loopholes and the challenges that there are with the policy, even though it is a good one, just as has been said on the round table. Thank you so much for making this program what it is. Without you, there is no program. Thank you for your messages, and we thank the technical crew for also ensuring that you get a quality broadcast. You have also joined us on our Facebook platform at the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation Facebook page. You have liked it, you have commented, you have shared our post, and we are grateful for that. I have been in here with George Ramsey Benemba, the man with many proverbs, and the man whose name says, I can not be hated. Thank you, Ramsey, for those insightful thoughts there. In here has also been Clive Akufo. Clive Akufo, the man with all the data. And he's been talking passionately about this policy this hour. And I know you have also enjoyed the program. God willing, we'll see you again next week. Let's meet.